All right, it's 4 p.m. I'd like to call the Town Council Financial Oversight Committee meeting to order. And I don't know if you want to do the same for the.
Let's see, we have one, two, I guess we have four. Yeah, so we'll call the special town council meeting to order as well.
In attendance, and I'll just ask folks to read themselves off from.
Butch Fuchero,
Kathy Hill, Town Council.
Dawn Starks, Finance Committee.
Jim Broderick, Financial Oversight.
Connor O'Shea, town council president and ex officio on the financial oversight committee.
Kim Collins, finance director. Rebecca Lisi, deputy town manager.
Yeah, it's
Anna Jones, town council.
and oversight committee.
And finance oversight committee, sorry.
Gordon Smith, superintendent of schools.
Pamela Blair, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Very good. Our normal agenda would be to review our minutes and approve minutes, but my recommendation, unless there's any objections, is that we defer that till after our discussion with the schools. Anna, you had volunteered to take minutes. Is that still okay with you? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So why don't we dive right in? We had the formulated questions at our last meeting, sent them out to the schools, and I know with the holidays and time off and negotiations, it was quite a crunch. And they exceeded our expectations and sent the responses back. Thank you very much for that.
Nicely done. too.
Yes, thank you for adjusting your day. We had scheduled negotiations with our custodial group, and unfortunately, it was challenging to get those dates scheduled. So anyway,
Well, it worked out well, especially particularly since I forgot to check with Tom Christensen, who was the only one who couldn't have made it. So I had a loss of just forgot all about it. So it worked out well, but unfortunately, when I found out he couldn't, that wasn't the greatest. But we have Rebecca here filling in, so thank you. So yes, my first thought would be to just kind of walk through the questions since we had kind of reviewed the budget, unless anyone has any other suggestions.
Sounds good.
okay. So you had sent us roughly 11 questions. We tried to put them together in a Google sheet where we could then attach charts and other things, and we'll go through. We'll probably tag team on questions. I think Pam will start us off with how the chart of accounts is set up and why certain things are coded specific ways.
Okay. So yes, we created a Google Doc, and we're both kind of working on it so that we could try to get this information to you. So I can understand if you don't know a school department chart of accounts of why you would ask why there's so many teacher line items. So when setting up the chart of accounts, we have to comply with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed's functional classifications on expenditures, also known as DOE codes. They're my life. I love the DOE codes. I classify everything by DOE codes. When I set up the chart of accounts for the operational accounts, which is what you were all looking at, the DOE code is actually embedded into the org, which we call an org. It's actually an organizational chart, organizational code. That's what it is in Munis. And so I gave an example here. Birchland Park 230500. That's the org, and then 511021 is the object code. Together they make an account. The org code BP 2305, that is a DOE code, which actually means classroom teacher. Another example below it, 230599, that is tells me that it's special ed, and that not any account, any org that has the last two digits that start with a 9 means it's some type of special ed account. Does that make sense? Okay. I also want to give an example of BP 2710. That is an adjustment counselor. So for each different coding, psychologist, librarian, they all have different codes, but yet they're still classified as a teacher. So that's why you see all the different. But I did think it was important to elaborate a little bit about the DOE codes and why they're so important, because this ties into the end of year report that I complete every September. It's a huge report. DESI wants things broken down, not only by funding source, meaning is it the operational budget, which is the Chapter 70 and the local contribution. Is it grants? Is it revolving? What type of grant is it? Is it a private? Is it a state? Is it, and also on top of that are the municipal expenditures that are for the school department. So all of those together, and then it's broken down, I'm sorry, there's even more. Then it's broken down by school, so by location, and then by these DOE codes. So it's just a huge report. I get a lot of information from Kim's department on the municipal expenditures. You're chuckling.
No, I know how much collaboration there is every
Yes.
September.
Exactly, and they're very helpful in coding things just how I need them to help get it into the end of year report. But so that you understand, as a municipal's budget goes up as well as a school department's, like say you add another employee or two to the accountant department, there's an agreement that is between the school and the town, and that's where these decisions are made on what gets allocated back, and DESI approves this agreement. So I guess I want everyone to understand that net school spending, as that line goes up, it's because expenditures are increasing on our side, on your side, altogether. Sorry, I'm trying to see. I wrote it all down probably better than the way I would say it. Oh, I guess that's it. It's a big report. Everything's by the DOE code. So the classification, when I do the quarterly report for the school committee, I intentionally don't give them all of that because it is very confusing. So I do pivot tables and things behind the scenes. So teachers are just lumped together. It just makes it just easier. And then when we talk about things through the budget process or as expenditures change, things behind the scenes, that's when we talk about more of the details. I hope that makes sense to you. Are there any questions on anything I said?
I have one for the chair. Yep, Jim?
Yes, go right ahead.
So, Sarah, is that why when I look at the breakout in the historical breakout, that there are line items in the same building would show a decrease in teacher salary and maybe an increase in another line?
Correct.
Say it's all different
Right.
positions and codes.
And then we use the first two digits of the account numbers, HS, Surprise High School,
Yeah.
District Y, DW,
Right, okay.
Park BP. So then they're all broke, but then there's continuity and consistency. So if you look, you're going to see the librarian is coded, it's the same. And again, that's a DOE chart of accounts that we are mandated to set up our chart of accounts like that. And years ago, just I'm showing my age, but years ago, they used to have us do it by programs also, which is why when chart of accounts were set up years ago, the business managers working with the finance departments would set up even more codes so that you can break it down. They kind of changed that over years, but as a business manager, I find that it can be very useful to still have that in there. I can still identify things and even break it down a little more for school committee or superintendent if they need it to be.
Thank you.
Just a general comment, unless it gets unwieldy, and I'll tell you if I think it is. Go ahead and ask a question. Don't have to ask me to say, okay. And if it starts to get a little confusing, I'll ask you to do that. But thank you for the courtesy.
Comment I would have is just that was a great explanation. I figured that there was some method to the madness
Yeah,
there, but
right.
Yes,
makes
thank
a lot
you.
of sense that there's not much level of detail there.
Good. I'm glad that it's clearer for
And
everyone.
there's a lot of crossover, so that the end of the year report is picking up on DPW provides maintenance, not only for the school department, but for all the town departments, plowing and so forth. So there's a percentage of that then gets caught into what's reported and into that net school spending.
Just have a quick question, and it's kind of tied to this, but it just went in my head, and if I don't say it now, I'll forget it.
Understand.
When we talk about, say, for lack of a better word, cross-pollination of town side and school, who makes the determination? What is the process? Does the principal say, we've noticed that this gutter is leaky, the custodian, how does that flow through?
So it's probably, there may be two parts depending on how comprehensive your question is there. The agreement between the town and the school department that then gets reviewed and accepted by DESI would govern that process in terms of end of the year reporting. So money's spent, by DPW that, in accordance with that agreement, a certain percentage is going to be attributed to the schools, IT and so forth. But in terms of, if a principal is dealing with a maintenance situation, your first line of defense are the building custodians. If the building custodians can handle it, then, and when I say that, I'm not trying to diminish their skills, but we have agreements on various things. They will do that. If not, then the principal will put a work order in, and that will go into the DPW system. And they have, DPW obviously has electrician, general contractor. I don't know, do we have a plumber now?
Oh,
No. Someday we'll have a plumber again, and then those folks come over and we go from there.
So it's still in a way, because years ago, I'm showing my age, it used to be site-based very much of the school. So in a way, it kind of is, because the principal knows the building and has the authority to put that in, and then it all gets collated and added up and then processed through the DESI formula.
Correct. So the work order system would be part of where it gets captured on the town side and then becomes part of that end user.
And there has to be a collaboration between the building principal, head custodian, as well as the town's DPW facilities manager. That's his title, right?
Yep.
There has to be communication. Sometimes it's emergency things that you can't really wait. I mean, you could do that help desk thing after, but you got to get on the phone with them and say, we got, a huge issue here. And staying on top of those kind of things. And I think it was I came here in 2015. It was before I came here, DPW and the custodians, right? There was an agreement and the outside of the buildings.
Initially, there was an agreement around outside maintenance and fields and so forth. I think that goes back to 1998. And then there was another agreement that was done somewhere in the neighborhood of 2009, maybe 2010. And that was picking up maintenance for the buildings themselves. Yeah. And when those agreements happened, as well as when the agreement with IT took place, the area of the school department budget that was designated for maintenance was then transferred over to DPW's budget. Originally, not when I was superintendent, but when I was in 2002 to 2004, when I was assistant principal at the high school, the school department had an IT department of sorts, if you will. It was nowhere to the level that the town has now, nor was technology to the level technology is now. But somewhere between 2004 and 2010, they came into an agreement and made it a town department that picked up the schools. And so any technology budget around, networking and so forth also is transferred over.
And does DESI require like a holistic plan as well for the entire system, so that there is kind of a pyramid and then it comes down and you have to present and I imagine project on each school? It pretty much.
They collect information throughout the year on where schools are. They obviously require and look at things like your SMART goals and overall plan for the district. And then it has morphed into many different names, but right now I think it's tiered focus monitoring. In essence, it's an audit. And so it can be around special education. We're actually experiencing one right now around special education. But it also could be around finance. It can be around, we had one. It can happen a couple different ways. It can happen because there's a situation that DESI's been alerted on because they have a section of their department called problem resolution. And then they'll come in around that specific issue that may be with a family. But that could generate into other changes and so forth. But, and this will be the last point, I know I'm long-winded. But we also then report 3 times a year, SIMS, which is all the student information. We report, I believe, 2 times a year on staff information. And then at the end of the year, we do a student discipline report, and that all is collected electronically.
And I was just going to add that every year, that end of year financial report is also audited. And one of the things that they always ask for is that agreement to look at it. And they actually go back and tie in the figures that are going in there to make sure that it's according to the formula that has been agreed upon between the school and the city or town. Because every district can be a little bit different, very, very similar, but yet different. So it's not a set formula. Does that make sense? Okay.
And I want to just say something about how that ties into net school spending.
Sure.
Just before we do, I noticed that Marilyn Richards has joined the meeting. Does that put us into a special town council meeting or?
Yeah, we
still
did
in-
open it.
Yeah.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Right ahead, Gordon. Sorry.
Oh, sure. So I think Pam had indicated in her answer, but basically net school spending is more than just the school department's budget. Net school spending looks at many different categories. And so based on end of the year reporting and percentages that have been attributed to the DPW budget, to IT budget and so forth, that all contributes to how they calculate net school spending.
As well as
So-
I think the school grants and revolving, not the town. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It does not for net school spending. I apologize.
I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to.
And then one of the other items that is a big one, because I know it drives budgets on all sides, is benefits. Benefits tie into net school spending. So the town, obviously having health benefits, providing that to all employees, that's part of what goes into net school spending. And so as those costs go up, net school spending will go up.
Right.
It's because it's a percentage of net school spending.
I'm a little confused. So in other words, if the IT department has an increase,
Mhm.
they add staff, for example, that affects your net school spending?
First, we would applaud.
Huh?
Excited about that.
First, they will applaud.
Oh, they applaud. But
But ultimately, the way it would play out would be in the end of the year report,
Yeah.
a certain percentage, if their budget has gone up because they've increased staff or done something else, is going to be attributed to the schools.
Do you mind me just chiming
Yeah,
in? So I
please,
believe
please.
what happens is because when you call IT for help, they'll say, and can you put in a work ticket? And can you put in a work ticket? Which, so the reason is, it comes back to tie into how much of their time is going to the school department? How much of their time is going to the police department? So they can do it that way. So then when Ryan, at the end of the fiscal year, when we reach out to ask him, I don't remember if I do or if Olga or Kim, but we get that information. So whatever that percentage is of the total help desk, does that make sense? So if we're 75% of everything, then he takes his expenditures and we get the 75%, whatever that is, comes back into the end of year report. Does that make sense?
So it's based on percentage, not
Yes.
dollar.
Sometimes it could be $1, but not with that specific. Like if there's with benefits with like retired employees, they know exactly how many are the school department. So that's $1 figure. Other things, though, it's a percentage. So a percentage of Kim's department, how much, and sometimes it's the break-in, what the school department is compared to the town's overall budget. So before it might have been 51%. I think now it's going to be like 49, 50. So it's about 50%. So of her department, 50% of that comes through the end of year report and affects net school spending. Because it's part of the overall expenditures. Does that make sense? Okay.
Everything's very different. It's all detailed out in the agreement. So, the percentages we're giving may not be
Correct. Yeah, right.
correct, but everything's done specifically.
I think you had provided that to us last year in terms of what the allocations were and the formulas. Yeah. Any other questions on question number 1?
It's a little bit, you're right.
Try to pick up the pace.
All right, let's move on to question number 2.
Okay, so that's me as well. So it said, provide as previously a printout which includes grant, current funding and revolving funds so we could see the full financial picture, including a 3-year look back. So I did try to give you a 3-year look back. I'm not exactly sure what happened because that second chart, it doesn't look accurate to me, so please just cross it out. I did the best I could
Second.
on the short. So the
FY24.
the very first one here is FY '26. I tried to give you a picture of what we are seeing for next year. We have the operating budget up on the top, and that is just the chapter 70 plus the local contribution, which is the school department's operating budget. And then down underneath are other revenue sources that affect our budget so that you can see. And I tried to put them into categories so you could see that some are salaries, some are supplies, contracted services, or miscellaneous other things. We have entitlement grants. Well, I was going to say, God willing, I'm not sure, with the federal government, I believe these are going to happen next year. There are some question marks, but I know, knock on wood where's the, so we have Title I, Title IIA, Title IV, Special Ed, Early Childhood Grant, Special Ed IDEA grant. Those are all entitlement grants that we typically get from year to year. They typically are pretty close to the previous year. They could go up a little bit. They could go down a little bit as well. If DESI knows, they'll try to give us a heads up ahead of time, such as last year. They thought that we were going to have $160,000 reduction in Title I, which was, as you can imagine, luckily the whole thing didn't come to fruition, but we don't know those things until after the fact, if that makes sense. So we have to take that into consideration through the budget process. Other grants we get is the DPH Comprehensive School Health Grant, which, is important for obvious reasons. We have the METCO grant, which is also very, very important. That's a state grant. The East Long Meadow Educational Endowment Fund, everyone knows about eLeaf, right? And they were very generous, $54,188. Each of our teachers can put in projects that they, are interested in doing to help the school, and eLeaf allocates funds, and so they're set up as little mini grants under this umbrella here. But I wanted to make sure that you knew that is part of it. Behind it could be a Promethean board, it could be some science, special new science curriculum that enhances what we already have. Those type of things.
Equipment for the drone team, which is winning awards.
Good point.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Own team, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
It
it's
is.
really
It's
cool.
really cool.
It's really cool. And there are Birchland students that are on that team now. So you have Birchland through the high school. It's kind of taken over the robotics team a little bit.
Yes,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Then we have revolving accounts on the bottom here. The athletic revolving account. And again, this is, why did I put one? I'm sorry, say that again?
Sales?
Yes, that's exactly what that is. Gate receipts and user fees. School committee voted this year as part of our first phase reduction, because I hope you all realize we had a 2-phase reduction at the school department, but that'll be another question. So we did user fees went up from $149
$290.
to $199, which equates to approximately $30,000. School committee felt that was enough to make a difference. It hadn't been increased in quite a number of years. So they felt that was, and we also did surveys of surrounding districts, and they felt that should be voted in. So they
So
did.
Pam, if I can, the 152,000, is that for this year, or that's reflecting next year with?
That's next,
additional
that's
revenue?
correct. Okay. Yes, it's approximately, I think, 122 this year.
The athletic budget in the operational budget
Right,
does not fully cover
right.
everything that we do in athletics. I think we
Not nearly. It's
Not-
about $700,000 to run that
whole
program,
program, we probably budget in the operational budget just over 500,000.
right?
And so, yeah, the user fees unfortunately have become a way of life, as well as, gate receipts. Hopefully we have strong teams to pull in the crowds
Circuit breakers, you're getting the money
after you
what
spend.
happened last year?
Correct.
Yeah.
But it's not just all the money. So there's a dollar threshold of $52,419,
Yeah.
I believe is the amount.
And $19.
Yes, and $19. And so what has to happen, they look at every individual, each district has to look at where they put the circuit breaker claim in, has to take every individual student that's on an IEP and add up the services that they're getting, so that we have many. I mean, 22% of our enrollment are on an
IEPs,
IEP.
yeah.
Some not significant, small little, but many are very significant. And the needs have changed as we've talked about over the last, couple of years. You've heard us say over and over again, things have changed. They're not the same. So I think all districts, we're not alone, are still trying to figure this out. We thought that some of the changes we were seeing in COVID, after COVID, were just short little, no.
Change and more severe.
Change in the way we
Yeah, it's
do
a-
things, change.
Well, it's a combination. I think you're right. Prior to COVID, there was, if people were looking at studies, there was a rise in mental health issues with teenagers. After COVID, that just exploded exponentially. And so the first challenge for us was getting students
Back to school.
just attendance. And the comprehensive health grant has allowed us to have a family care coordinator part-time who helps each building as an attendance team. And they try to problem solve around individual students that are starting to really accumulate consecutive absences. And a lot of it, so the person actually is one of our substitute nurses, and she puts on her medical hat almost in every one of those cases because there's always some type of medical piece to the puzzle. And if we can provide some type of support for that, we have a much better chance of getting that student in on a daily basis.
But in addition to the high school, it's not just the high schoolers.
No.
The little tykes we're seeing.
Well, I've had restricted activities. So one of the ones that I'm allowed to do is walk. So
Oh,
where I live, I don't have sidewalks. So I sometimes now, have on the weekends park at the Meadowbrook
Mhm.
and walk down Parker Street. And there's a little sign there talking about absences. And
oh, yes.
but it amounts to X number of days. And
It's actually one of our
GPH
SMART
grant.
goals
Yes.
is working on decreasing absences, partnering with families and so forth.
So to finish answering your question on that circuit breaker, so there was a dollar threshold and expenditures that go above that dollar threshold, nothing below, has to be above that dollar threshold. And then there's certain expenditures, not everything qualifies. So if it's a qualified expenditure above that $52,419, it can go on the claim form, and the state will give us back, hopefully, up to 75%. The last few years,
dollar for dollar, it's 75%.
no, it's up to 75. And I say that because when I first came here, in 2015, it was 72%. And that 3% is a big number when you're talking about $1.5 million. So it has been 75% the last few years. But what I'm a little anxious about, and many other districts, is because, and again, we're not alone. Special ed it's growing. There's a lot going on with it. And so more districts are putting in the same expenditures, so same claims that we are. So the pot is getting bigger, the money stays the same. And that's a problem, right? Because you can't sustain that 75%. They are looking at increasing it. We don't know if that's going to pass or not. It would certainly be helpful if it did, but we don't know. That's one of the many moving pieces behind the scenes.
Actually
So
was a,
Hey, can I just add, I'm jumping way ahead. You're saying 75%, but didn't I read in one of your answers that we only got 44%?
yeah, so.
transportation.
So 2 years ago, I think the legislature is trying to help in this situation. They know that this is a really challenging situation for districts. So 2 years ago, they approved that specialized transportation would be able to be reimbursed through circuit breaker. However, it's all around what the legislature then, or in the governor's budgets first, how much they allot to that line item in the budget. And then by law, the first part of reimbursement has to be around academics and tuition. So districts who have been reimbursed last few years at 75%, we're getting 75% for academic reimbursement that it's above that 52,000 and change threshold. And then whatever was left over, which was not enough for transportation, was then distributed for the claims for transportation. And that ended up being 44%. So, as you make projections in charts like this, and then you realize that you're losing out on a considerable percentage, that becomes challenging. That becomes, deficits and gaps and fiscal challenges that we deal with throughout the year. This was just one of them.
And so.
This is in question number 5.
Yeah.
It is related to the discussion we're having. It is mind-boggling to understand how you put a priority on tuition or whatever when you have to get the kid there. So,
Because they just added transportation just 2 years ago. It's.
oh, really?
Yes, it wasn't there before.
And it's not
Well,
like
really
you can
glad they-
avoid that expense. I don't know.
And it's not, to my knowledge, I don't know if you've seen anything, they do have some governance over how far the out-of-district providers can raise their tuition. I wouldn't say it's tight enough guidance, but that's just a personal opinion. They don't have that same guidance with transportation. So we've had transportation vendors who have started with us, and then when they realize how challenging some of the situations may be, they then say, well, you know what? We have other people who are interested in our services, and they just drop us. And so that's caused some challenging situations as well, because you do have to get people to school.
And I know we had talked in the past that you were starting or attempting to bring in-house and kind of create your own special ed. I don't want to say department because you have that, but bring more of them and keep them more
Sure.
close. How is that going? And
So we've had the best luck over time with our ASD program. And I think we need to do some more tweaking to get back. I think we had our last ASD, I'm sorry, is autism spectrum disorder.
There's many acronyms.
And that was something that was pretty well established when I arrived and became superintendent. And it got better as we've gone along. And so it was well established in all schools, K to 12. We also have done, I think, a very good job. And it's mostly because of the partnership that we develop with our families, where we've had, I'll just call it intensive medical needs. It's not really a special ed program, if you will. There are other elements that would designate it specialized services, but though we've kept most of our students in district who have needed very specialized care throughout the day. And that's been exceptional. I think it's been a great experience, not only for our students who are in the mainstream, our staff, and for the families, because they're in their home school. And there's a lot to be said for that. And so, and this is kind of jumping to question 11. One of the things that we've been working on the last few years, and it's taken a few years to get into place, is go from a model in special education where a lot is placed on the individual special education teacher and liaison, and bring in a model where you have educational team leaders. And one of the reasons why it took more than a year to get to this year of implementation is because there are elements that needed to be negotiated. And we were negotiating with the East Long Meadow Education Association last year. And so we worked through that, and we have roughly 45 to 48 special education teachers throughout the district. The lion's share of their work, in addition to their direct teaching, was dealing with their caseload of special education students, making sure all the paperwork is current, up to date, and ready for any annual meeting. Then if there's any type of amendment or communication that needs to go out, they managed all of that. We did have stipend positions called facilitators who helped predominantly with out-of-district meetings, because they were in positions, generally they were our school psychologists, so they might be going to those meetings anyway. And we still have the facilitator role in this year one of ETLs, but it's reduced considerably because now we have 4 individuals servicing our 5 schools. These are experienced special educators who have either been in both the special education teaching role or now in or were in an ETL role in another district. And now they're working with us. And it's given us a chance to really look at, thankfully it's been successful, but now have, instead of 48 people writing IEPs, we have 4.
So they do it better in less time.
So they also now have a
Continuity.
chance to look at consistency. How are all these supports being put in place across the district? And so conversations that we're having, we have every spring, but this year, especially given some of the challenges, we're really focused in on, okay, we're going to have fewer staff next year. So what does that look like in terms of deploying staff, paraprofessionals, special educators across the district? And that's going to be another pretty large change, because there may be switching where, and there's always been switching where if a student is transitioning and they happen to have in their IEP a one-to-one paraprofessional, which we're trying to reduce, because that really, it's not necessarily the greatest situation for the student, because there's a dependency that grows there. And so then you're not growing certain skills to become independent. And it's a situation where then one staff member is kind of taken out of your service mix for the entire day. So we're looking at that, and we're starting to think about, okay, what will this look like next year? Where's the need? How do we deploy this differently? And we're starting to write IEPs differently, but more consistently, because everybody has their own style. Everybody was following the law, but how you put certain things in the grid may change how we then have to staff it. So we're looking at that, and hopefully that's going to start to have some impact in terms of bringing down some of the cost, but also there's no guarantee as to when we'll see sort of all this come to fruition. Maybe you have fewer people feeling the need, because it starts with, there are always going to be students that unfortunately we will not be able to provide all the supports. But it starts sometimes emotionally that, oh, I think we need this, or we need this. And until we've had a chance to really prove that maybe we can support and have success without some of that, we're going to be able to make real changes. So you're not going to see all of a sudden $500,000 worth of savings, but you may see 50 to 150,000, and that's
Applaud
a few positions.
your effort to try to think those things through.
The motto has been this year, and I know it's been challenging because you're talking about 4 people,
Yeah.
but meeting by meeting.
And it's been a success. And so to answer in a short word, it's a slow process. It's not going to, has to be well thought out. And it has been over the past few years coming out of COVID, like what is going on? And, and it's not going away. And then what do we need to do? But you need to have some reallocation of FTE people and try to figure out which direction. And now I feel like we're moving in a nice, slow, which I think is wise direction on how, because it really has been a success. We're really starting to hear it now from staff, maybe that we're doubting the change in the model, not the new staff coming in, but existing staff, because change is hard, right? People don't always like change.
48 liaisons love us right now.
Yeah.
They've been able to focus just on teaching this year, which is really
where
been
they should be
fantastic. And so
focusing,
now
right?
you can think about deploying their skills differently too.
I'd like to bring us back to question 2.
Sorry.
And
Kind of handled question 11.
yeah, no, it'll facilitate, make us faster going through some of those. Pam, were you saying probably the FY24 maybe isn't?
That's what I'm saying. I'm not exactly sure what happened.
Because I couldn't
I'm looking at it.
find the circuit breaker or the revolving funds or that kind of thing, but I do see the ESSER. Was that the last year that you were able to use?
That ended on September 30th, yes. And so we were able to, do a lot of good things with that grant. We did hire some staffing during the first few years. Well, we didn't even start using it. It was an FY22 grant, the final ESSER $2.2 million grant. But we didn't start to delve into it, I think, until, was it FY24? I felt like it took us a while to get to that, but we utilized it for things like permanent building subs. They were really struggling. Many people, just like students didn't want to come back to work, many people didn't want to come back to work. So we were struggling to get paraprofessionals and some of the teachers back too. So, I mean, it was real. And so the principals really expressed their concern and their challenge with that, with getting subs and then calling last minute. It made it really hard, and you're not the only district. Say that again?
It was in FY '23.
23, thank you. And so we gradually started to use that. So Gordon will bring me back so that I don't wander off with my thought process. So that grant ended September 30th. What we did, in addition to adding some of those temporary bodies to help us, we were also plugging in some of those holes that we talked about with the services that were needed. Contracted services were definitely utilized by ESSER funding. But what I'm very proud to say is that we did get a beautiful playground, preschool playground over at Meadowbrook, and that is just finishing up now. We were approved by DESI to have late liquidation. And I know there was some discussion on federal funding out there that people like lost the funding. We are all set. I have a measly 26,000 still encumbered, and that's just for the seeding that is actually happening. It might have already happened. It's just is happening now. So that will be coming off of the books, but that's the last of the monies that we have. So yeah.
Very good. Questions for Pam on that was question 2, although she provided the 25.
Yeah, I tried to just show you. I tried to cut and paste from some documents I had. And again, I was doing it with not a whole lot of time. So I apologize that but I wanted to give you the idea of where do these go? And they do that. We have some salary funded people, not too many, but yes, we do. And if these go
Just
away,
To that point around ESSER, we tried to stay away from carrying personnel.
Permanent personnel.
Yeah.
Right, and so what we did as we scaled back from building permanent substitutes, we kept 5. However, what we looked at was our line item for daily on-call subs. Can we utilize the amount we're paying the building permanent subs, carve a little bit out of that and pay them and keep them? And the building principals love the idea, because you have someone in your building that knows sort of the ebb and flow of how your building runs and can go to any number of situations and be of help. So we moved certain folks off of ESSER when ESSER ended, and we kept 5 permanent subs, but that's paid for through, we didn't add money to the budget. We used an existing substitute line item.
right.
Questions on the funding sources? Okay. The students. So there's a little change, but not a ton.
Not a ton. You can see if you go to school year 21-22, though the year before that and the 21-22 school year, those were the 2 years, one directly impacted that's not on the sheet by COVID. And even 21-22 was still impacted by COVID because we started the year with a mask order and so forth. We did get a lot of families, more than we had ever in my tenure, opted to homeschool. And then we also had families who went to parochial schools. We started to get those families back in 22-23. So we had a nice bump up. And then 23-24, sort of a leveling off. 24-25, we're not dissimilar to, unfortunately, many districts, I think, across the Commonwealth, where we're either flat or slightly declining. That's a conservative estimate because we did add additional school choice. We're still a pretty desirable school district. And the school committee has one of their sort of revenue generating thoughts around dealing with the immediate fiscal challenge was maybe we should add more school choice slots. So they did have 10 and 10 at the 9th grade level and 10 at the 6th grade level. Those tend to be grades that are more sought after because it's a transition year. So families may stay, in their elementary school up until 5th grade, and then may look to move to a town, as they're entering middle school. We had more than enough applicants to fill those slots, so we'll be running a lottery.
So Gordon, as you look at, and again, thank you for the outlining the FTEs over the course of the next few years or from 21. So there's kind of like a slow and steady increase in FTEs, even though the number of students is pretty much flat.
Yeah.
What's driving, what?
So that's a sort of a national phenomenon. As research has gotten better, and we were talking about sort of the mental health crisis, I mean, Kathy's probably heard me talk about this for years, because we were discussing adjustment counselors probably back in 2010 and 2011.
That was,
So it's not new necessarily, but it's better researched and better documented. And so to support students and make sure they have the full opportunity to learn to their fullest extent and, you know, reach their potential, to use a lot of those cliches that you hear us use quite often, more staff is needed. And so even before COVID, we had partnered with River Valley Counseling, because we did have adjustment counselors. We were really excited that not only the school committee, but the town supported us in having at least one adjustment counselor at the school. But we still had students that needed more therapeutic care. And River Valley was one of the first groups that figured out how to do this without necessarily costing schools more money, but partnering with schools, because the biggest challenge was when a team recommends your child may benefit from more counseling outside than, you know, the adjustment counselor who's seeing them X number of times per week. River Valley found a way to do it through insurance, as long as schools were willing to partner with them and give them a space. So it was really great. That was a game changer.
Can I just add that we were really lucky, Gordon, that you partnered with them right before COVID hit, not long before. So when, like, we already had an established relationship. And so when we came out of it and districts were really struggling to try to get that behavioral support because it was just crazy, we already had that in place. So we were very lucky. And also there was something else, town council had approved something for us that we were very lucky. God, it escaped my mind, that helped us so much after COVID. It'll come to my mind. Anyways, I just thought I would mention.
Anyway, there was a chart at one of the
So it's not
webinars.
not primary teaching positions, it's.
No, it's support staff. It's
Contracted.
other staff that, but there's a national chart that I saw earlier in the year. There's been a lot of charts around budget, but your enrollment nationally flatlining, and your staff over the years is going like this. So there's more staff in most buildings across the country than existed before. And these are the reasons why. You know, I think the reasons are legitimate, but we still have to find ways to figure out what's the balance.
Well, I have two quick questions.
Sure.
So student-teacher ratio generally is?
At the elementary level, Meadowbrook, we're right around 20 and 21. Second grade, I think, is our biggest grades. They may be, some classes are 22, some classes are 21. At the 3 through 5 schools, it's closer to 18 at the moment, 18 and 19. And then secondary level, it depends a lot on, you know, if it's an English course, say at the high school, those tend to have more students in them. Some of the electives are smaller. PE has, usually it's pushing 30.
And then also, do we know the overall potential student population in town, like the percentage who are not participating at all in?
We do. It's so we have to do I didn't bring it with me, but school attending reports every year.
You know, like,
So, I mean, you look at, what did I have? 25, 19, you probably could add another, 25, 30 students to that. Because what we have to do is we send out letters and emails to the parochial schools. We send out to local Connecticut and local independent private schools. And also then you have school choice, because we do have students who opt to go to other districts, and you have charter schools. And so we try to every year pinpoint, okay, here are all the folks in our grades pre-K to 12. here are the folks that are in-state parochial. Here are folks that are in out-of-state parochial. Here are folks that are in-state private, out-of-state private, and so forth. Charter and
And you must also have a number for families that homeschool?
we do,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so back in, when it was starting to double, it was upwards of close to 60. Now it's back down to, I think, high 20s or low 30s.
Other questions on number 3 or number 4? If not, we'll move on to number 5. So,
You want to start or you want me to start? Take a shot at
He
it.
did we
Yeah, we
skip
covered.
4?
No, we covered
Good,
it.
okay, all right.
So basically,
one was the students, one was the,
Okay,
yeah.
got it.
the,
Staff, okay.
when the school department went through, as I think most departments did, through what was considered your budget request and then a level 1
Level
reduction budget request, and then ultimately a final request. And that was working with Tom and Kim and Rebecca and other folks, members of the town council and so forth, in just trying to figure out what the town can support and afford, as well as articulate, because that's our job, what the students need. So we had one of the revenue ideas was, and it's not, it'd be similar to balancing the budget with free cash. It's not the greatest fiscal practice.
Can I
but-
just stop you for a
Yeah,
second,
please.
Greg? Because I feel like,
I was going to go back to that.
oh, you were?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, I
just
apologize.
He was asking about because the question's about supplies, right?
Okay,
So one of the elements in the first rung of this, because before the meeting, Kathy and I were talking about that, it's challenging when you get to staff reduction, because not only are you sending out letters, but I'm also meeting personally with people, and that's not the highlight of anyone's day or career. But in looking at how we can reorganize revenue, one of the thought processes was, well, we've been in school choice for a few years. We haven't touched that money because one of the reasons that the school committee had agreed to re-enter school choice, because they had been in it many years prior, and then there was a hiatus, and now we're back in the school choice arena, so to speak, was for unforeseen special education costs or unforeseen costs that, were unanticipated in a given budget year. Certainly we have one of those. So they not only approved a certain amount of money to cover some deficit this year, but then in developing the budget for next year, ultimately they're putting in about $550,000 of school choice. And that's not going to generate anywhere as quickly as it's going to be expended now. So that was one element. Where to place that in the budget funding, what am I looking at? Org chart, I guess,
yeah,
or line of
the
accounts.
expenditures, like
Yeah.
where am I going to reduce the
Supplies were looked at.
supplies?
So we're not going to go without supplies, but we're going to be infusing the school choice money to do that.
so it won't show as an expense in supplies. It'll show as you're taking it from.
Eventually it will show as an expense.
Oh, okay.
Under school choice revolving account, not under the operational budget. But
I
we have
just
to-
wasn't sure. It just looked like you were going to wind up having to buy supplies. So
That has to be taken into consideration for that
Meeting with
FY
each person at
'27.
$20.
Yeah.
That's it. No, I'm just kidding. But to Pam's point, because she had refocused me on the.
I just think it's an important,
Yeah, so during that process, we knew when we put together in January level services that we were looking at, if we were going to bring everybody back and all programming back, we were looking at a $3 million increase or a 8.57% increase. We knew that that was going to be too challenging a request. It's not dissimilar to where towns around us started. It doesn't mean that they necessarily got it, but that's where they started. So we worked through that level one process where first we were looking at how do we reorganize funds that exist? How do we possibly create more funds? And then unfortunately, in order to just to get to 5% and reduce it by about 1.2 million, we also had to reduce 6 positions. So in January into February, we had reduced 6 positions. 3 of which at the time were retirement and 3 of which had people in them. So already we're starting to feel the impact. Then unfortunately, as we went through February into March, to get to the town manager's recommendation of 2.5%, we didn't have any more revenue that we could move around. So now we were looking at cutting about a little less than 900,000, but ultimately it became 13 positions.
In addition to the 6.
Yeah, in addition. So you're talking about 19 positions right now. There may be some additional, hopefully not, but we're still working through that. So all of those individuals were notified last Tuesday. And then meetings were had for anybody who wanted them, and they still have that opportunity Wednesday and Thursday.
So I just want to reiterate that we started at 3 million, we brought it down by 1.2 million, and then we brought it down by close to another $900,000. So we have $2.1 million in reductions from our level services budget. I just felt very compelled to make sure that that was clear to everyone, that we have worked very diligently. As Gordon said, those, how many letters? 19 letters.
So 20.
20.
Because
that you
the
sent out
challenging part
10 days ago,
with all of
last
that,
week.
as you send those letters, is that we're also governed by contracts. And so it's not necessarily this position, even though I've listed the positions and we'll do so again in the school committee meeting, because we were trying to be very sensitive to the fact that until the school committee has voted, that we don't list all the positions. Other towns have done that, and there's, strategy around that.
School committee voted the amount. They knew that we were going to get to 2.5% to match the town manager. We understood the challenges that the town had, and respectfully, they decided to do that. So they voted that number in the meeting, but never specific positions until executive session. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. So last Monday's school committee meeting, a week ago from this past Monday this week, they did vote specifically around positions. There had been many different discussions and recommendations and so forth, but ultimately they had to make a decision, and they made that decision. But as I was talking about in terms of contracts, so as you send those letters, you also then have to recognize that in most of the contracts, there's a seniority system. And so you have to first look at, of the positions you're reducing, who is the most senior? And you start there. And that person has the most rights, if you will. Then you look at, is there a vacancy for which that person is licensed? And that person immediately goes there. If there's not a vacancy, then that person has the ability to bump someone first who may have not reached professional status, meaning that they haven't been in the district for 3 full years. They would bump that person. If there is no person with non-professional status, then they can actually bump someone who has professional status. But it's a complicated process. So more letters than the positions you're reducing need to go out. And then obviously there's understandably questions. And so answering those questions and dealing with those pieces are challenging.
Don't envy you, right?
Yeah. So
If I understand, to get to this 2.1 million decrease.
Yeah.
As Pam put it, cut staff. You did some work with Unit A?
we did. Yeah. So I apologize. Thank
Glad you
you.
asked
Get me
that.
back on.
Let me just finish, so I get the full picture.
Yeah, Unit A, so East Long Meadow Education Association sometimes gets referred to as Unit A. They worked with us in that first round and were very collaborative. And, no one wants to necessarily stop professional development because contractually they have up to $650 that they can get reimbursed with approved professional development. And we propose freezing that. However, we have to negotiate that. And they ultimately agreed because that was going to save positions. And then also, we have our counselors work 5 days before the start of the school year and 5 days after the start of the school, after the school year ends. We proposed that we reduce that to 5 days. And ultimately, that was a little bit harder because now you're focusing it on a smaller group, but they also agreed to that. So they were very collaborative and helpful in terms of looking at how can we do something to change revenue sources or create revenue and so forth. So we did do that. And once we had sort of exhausted those efforts, unfortunately, then when your budget is 83% salary, that's where you have to go.
Rich had more questions.
Yeah, sorry.
I just want to be, so that was the second creative way. The third, I'm guessing, is that use school choice money?
Yeah, so that was part of the original revenue. Our recommendation, since they had used school choice money this year to offset some of the gap in special education, especially when you're expecting a certain amount to come back for transportation, you're only getting 44% as opposed to 75%. They did infuse some school choice money. So one of the recommendations that Pam and I had was, let's expand school choice. But let's also, if we have some rollover money, let's add some of the rollover money to next year's budget. And that's what's going into the supply line item.
And the fourth way was you raised revenue, correct, by with the athletic fees?
Yeah. We did, yes.
Was there any discussion about raising a transportation fee, charging for clubs?
There was actually, all of that was discussed. As a good point. We didn't write them down, but
We also
we
talked
can
about
talk
furlough
about 'em.
days too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot
So
talked.
we were trying to balance because we're still a school department and we're still supposed to be about families. So we were trying not to sort of balance our fiscal challenges on the backs of families. And so to the point someone made, I think, Jim, you made it, we have to get students to school. We already charge a transportation fee. And so I think rightfully so, even though we made the recommendation, school committee said, we're already charging for athletics. Families are somewhat used to paying for athletics as they come up through rec sports and so forth. And we hadn't raised the athletic user fee for at least 23 years. I think it goes back to when I was assistant principal. So they were okay with that. They did not want to raise transportation fees. And they also didn't want to diminish, because we also, I threw a few different recommendations up there. I said, what if you reduce all ninth grade level sports? And a good point was made in those discussions that sometimes that's the only level that a student plays. And so that's their one experience with high school athletics. And so if we charged more, I don't think we've had an activity fee before. If we charge for that, do you lose participation on, say, the drone team, which is growing and winning awards?
We also felt that the school committee felt that had a huge impact on students. And that was the last thing we're
That
trying
they
to
wanted to
do
do.
as much as we can. The lowest impact for the students, exactly, which is why, so just in case anyone's curious, the transportation fee is $270 per student, which is basically $150 a day for the 180 days, and with the family cap of $540. So school committee wanted to keep that as is and not have that and get our kids to school.
Thank you.
Other questions?
That's the one that, thank you.
I'm going to ask for a clarifying question. Gordon and Pam, was the freeze in the I believe it was online curriculum? Yes. Is it also falling under the?
That was under the level 1 revenue. No, that actually, we have a curriculum renewal cycle. And so there's $80,000 that are designated, that's designated each year as departments reach their 4th year in that 5-year cycle. And they've done a study looking at, one, are we currently aligned with new standards that may have come out? may have come out, excuse me, are we using materials that are the most current? Are there better materials to make sure that we're providing the students the best possible learning environment and supplying it in the best possible way? So for many years, we really didn't have a line item that allowed for purchasing. And 80,000 goes pretty quickly when if you have 1 or 2 or 3 departments in the cycle ready to purchase. Next year, we're free. So anyone who is up on the cycle, they'll just remain on that level, and the curriculum is the curriculum at the moment. So that 80,000 is going to get designated into other areas.
What was the line item that would fall under?
I don't know if we've transferred it to supplies or
Wait a minute, I'm sorry.
so it's curriculum renewal.
Multitasking here.
Yeah, sorry.
No, curriculum renewal, yeah. So what
Are we
exactly
putting
is
it
your
into
question?
supplies?
In terms of the way you organize the line.
In the chart of accounts? Is that what you're asking?
Like, is it a supplies or material? Is that?
I think it would fall under supplies and materials, yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, for the character code, the way we run the reports, that's your question. Yeah, I can give you the more specifics.
Wondering if that also fell under this category.
It's a separate, it sounded funny. It's separate from the other supply that we talked about. Those are at the school level. This is an additional line
That'll be
item.
under educational or instructional materials.
Instructional.
Yeah.
materials.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on number 5? So we'll move to number 6. I'm kind of flabbergasted by the increases in the tuitions. But
Well-
I'm kind of flabbergasted by the increase in the number of students going to LPVEC thanks to,
Well, so there's 2 different things. So the district-wide tuition account is LP, that's the voc ed. So after COVID, those numbers have been increasing, and also because they now allow 9th graders. I think you had mentioned that.
It's actually
Gordon?
more than allow, it's mandated.
Mandated, I'm sorry. Mandated is the better word to use.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, yes, it's a challenge, but it actually, once we got by the fiscal piece of it, it was really great for our 8th graders to look at, because I think one of the things that were happening in the LPVC, you had Longmeadow, Ludlow, East Longmeadow, and Hamden Wilbraham, 4 of the districts that only sent 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. But I think the unfortunate thing for some of our students was that when they got into the high school and they got into or through their 9th grade year and they were kind of academically set, they figured out where they were going. Not as many were willing to take a look at some of the vocational programs, which are exceptional at the LPVC. And they not only have gotten better over time, but I think there was always this stigma that if you go to a vocational school, you can't go to college. And that's really untrue. And so anyway, I'm just going to give my plug for that. It is a fiscal challenge, but I thought it was a good thing for our students in the end, because you see how much they jumped. I think that's.
so that wouldn't be the special education.
It's
No,
not the
this
special
This
ed.
is a district-wide,
This would be
Career
like
tech.
machining,
that's like the 200,000
construction or carpentry,
increase.
Yeah.
Culinary arts.
culinary arts.
Yep.
Yep.
And this is a national trend. If you look at
Yes.
Putnam Vocational in
Right.
Springfield,
Right.
it's one of the most popular schools now.
Yeah, I think it's the most popular. Yeah.
Yep, definitely is a trend. And so the next question on the special ed tuition line items, as I told you, those are broken out, well, I think I told you, by DESI DOE code. So if you see miscellaneous tuition line items, I wanted you to understand that I have to code things. Is it a special ed day placement in state? Is it a special ed day placement out of state? Is it a residential placement? Is it a summer program? So there's many line items, behind the scenes, but they're all the out of district tuitions. And so what has happened in this current year, which has affected obviously next year, and why we need to rectify this, or that's why we had the problems this year. We were able to roll over, which every business manager, school committee, superintendent, we tried to do is roll over as much circuit breaker revenue as we can from one year to the other, to the next, because we can legally roll over a full year's amount of revenue. And so that's a nice little safety net for when things happen. We rolled over $1,038,000, I believe is the amount from last year. We've expended that, which we have to expend in the following year. In addition to that, we received 1.6 million in the current year's circuit breaker reimbursement. That is all mostly going to be used. We might be able to have a few.
We still have the fourth quarter, right?
Yeah, we have the fourth quarter that yes, it's about $400,000
Hoping to save some of it.
that we're hoping, but 400,000 instead of $1 million. That's one of the problems. In addition to that, this year, we already knew we were going to have a deficit, which is why we did not have to come to town council to ask for revenue to help us, is because we had that school choice revolving account. So the school committee voted to use $496,896, something on that figure, from school choice for the special ed expenditures. In addition to that, the only things that a school department can prepay for at the end of a fiscal year are special education tuitions or collaborative expenditures. That's it. But as I'm sure Kim can attest to the fact, sometimes you don't know until you're at the end of a year. You don't know until you're at that end of the year, the last stretch, as the POs are closing, and how much, are these real expenditures? Are these? So we're all working on that, and especially in the month of May, trying to not be so crazy in June, but it is crazy in June too. And it just is, it's the beast, the way it is. And so last year, the prior 2 years, I was able to do prepays of approximately $300,000 to $500,000, which, as you can imagine, then helped the next year. This last year, I was only able to do like $75,000. So when you put all those different pieces together, and when you try to look at next, so we figured out how we're going to get through this year, and we're doing it. We also, just so that you know, in case you're not aware, the school committee voted to put a budget freeze on the supply accounts this year. So we are only expending or buying essential purchases. Obviously, if the school needs something, we're going to get it for them. But we're looking at all of that. So in order for this now to roll into FY26, when you've got your already down $1.5 million, we have to increase the operating budget lines, or we're not going to be able to sustain what is happening behind the scenes with special ed. I mean, I call it the perfect storm, with ESSER funding going away, with inflation increasing, with special needs increasing, and yet Chapter 70 is decreasing that percentage. And because of the Student Opportunity Act, they've changed the formula, and they're putting more of the burden on the towns. So if you notice that spread, if you look at any of Desi's things, you're going to see that Chapter 70 is kind of leveling off, but they're expecting the towns to increase. And each town is different, and there's many things behind the formula. I don't want to act like I know it all, because it gets very confusing, but those are all the different things that have affected why you're seeing that increase.
Do you actually have more kids that you're having to send out of district for?
So it's actually, we only, between last year and this year, we've only added 2 students. The bigger piece to the, and that's fluid. So, throughout the year, it's been 2. There may be meetings going on where there may be some people recommended to go out. But one of the bigger challenges is kind of like a hidden challenge, if you will, is that these out-of-district placements are really in high demand. And so they're somewhat in the driver's seat in terms of whether they feel that they can meet a student's needs. And so you have to have an annual meeting to review an IEP. And so last year in May and June, after we put the budget basically to bed, we had 3 or 4 meetings where students who were in and out of district placements, the school said, we can't
The out-of-district school.
Yeah, so we can no longer meet this child's needs, which then forces the district team, to look at other placements. Never have I seen those other placements be less expensive. So just one example, we went from, I want to say it's like was it $36,000? 46,000 to $156,000.
Geez.
And we had 3 or 4 of those May and June last year. And so that's unfortunately ongoing. So that's another area where if I jump to, question 11, we have to prepare our teams to do a better job, and that's hard to do in terms of how do you diplomatically work through those kind of settings so that you're not, one, possibly referring out, or two, so that you're not losing a placement that you have. Is that more communication? Is that,
It's just such a hard dynamic. I mean,
Right.
I looked at the two of them together, it's like your entire increase
right? Yeah.
is in that category. And even if you take out the lower Pioneer Valley, the 250, still 2/3 of it.
Right.
And
It's,
that's not to say that couldn't happen the next year and the next year and the next year.
and that's and most of that's governed by law.
Yeah.
So once a team decides, we don't have any
No choice.
Those funds need to go there, which means you're moving funds from other areas to meet that. Two other things which I have spoken to state reps and our state senator about. So the division of the Operational Services Division, who governs basically when and how, each October they send out their decision as to how much these out-of-district providers can raise their tuition. So last 2 years, they went up, what did I put?
Well, 2 years ago, it was
4.69%. Yeah,
Don't
but
forget.
just in the we had ESSER though.
Yeah.
And last year is 4.69% and projected for next year is 3.67. But we're one of those districts that Pam was talking about. I think there are about 233 districts that initially the Student Opportunity Act helped a little bit, but now we're in this cycle where we're just getting the minimum amount per pupil. And so this year in the governor's budget, it was $75 per pupil, which is roughly $185,000, 100.
That's the increase this year to chapter 70.
Which is only 1.35% increase. So you're already behind in terms of
Can I add
Chapter
though,
70.
Gordon?
Yeah,
I'm
please.
sorry, I'm going to put a
Yeah.
plug in that the I always say this wrong. The
Ways and Means.
Thank you. Ways and Means Committee has put out their budget, which is the next one after the governor's, and they have increased that minimum aid from 75 to 150. So if that comes to fruition, that would be another $185,100 that would increase chapter 70, which would be wonderful if the school department could get, because that would be additional revenue that the town was not expecting. And we are very respectful of their challenges and just would like, I just wanted to make mention of that.
Absolutely. That's important. So that was House Ways and Means. I think it then goes to the Senate Ways and Means, and then they have the
Conference committee.
But last year, if I remember correctly, the increase that the House Ways and Means Committee put in survived Senate and went to the combined, and then it became part of the full budget for this state. But we won't know that till
Which doesn't actually get approved
Until-
after the town's budget.
July or, yeah. Yes.
It's a little crazy,
It's
isn't it?
unfortunate.
Other questions on question number 6? Other comments? Anna, Marilyn? Yeah. Thank you that was a pretty thorough discussion. I appreciate it. Number 7 was the question about the net school spending.
I think we've covered that.
Yeah.
I feel like we did. It's
It
that end of
gives you
year
an idea
report.
in the chart, just.
What you're saying is we're not alone.
We're not alone.
If you go to that next page, there's a nice chart there that shows you the LPC districts that I just went on today.
I notice it's 24. Is there?
That's
That's the last one.
it, because we're in 25, so yeah, they'll post that next year. They're always a little behind.
Is there something about West Springfield and Southwick Tolland that they're able to get by with 102?
We're wondering the same thing.
It's hard to say. Each district is different. Southwick Towns a regional school. They may qualify for certain grants because they're also rural. Springfield's a bigger school system, has some more urban elements to it where they may qualify for.
Probably it right there. Yeah.
Also heavy industry.
Yeah, true.
I think part of the question was, it seemed like the gap was getting bigger.
Yeah, and it probably is. I think there's both some of the things we've discussed in terms of staffing and because the formula is built on enrollment. And they don't count necessarily your school choice students because technically you're getting some money for them. They don't count preschool students. So
Can I also,
yeah.
I was just going to add, I wrote there that, according to DESI's website, required net school spending is the annual minimum that must be spent on schools to provide an adequate educational program. Net school spending includes Chapter 70 and appropriated local contribution plus the municipal indirect spending for the schools. These expenditures are reported on the end of year report, which I do in the month of September. I guess what I wanted to really stress was that required is an adequate. And I think most districts want to go beyond just adequate if they can. And that's why you see that trend going up. And I think it has to also do with the Chapter 70 coming down and different. And again, there's a lot of things behind in the formula, which you can get on DESI's website and look it all up. It's all there for you. It gets a little complex, but how wealthy is your district? What is your tax base? What is it? There's many things that are tied into it. So
Just an observation, and it just shows how old I am. I was on the appropriations committee, and I think actually Marilyn was on the select board when they passed the foundation budget. And our budgets, we had to arbitrarily increase our school budgets to get up to the foundation level. And yet at the time, it didn't seem like we were underfunding the schools. So it was a really wild kind of thing because the argument was, well, we'll increase the quality of education by increasing the funding of the education. But and it just seemed the philosophy just seems to have just gotten more complicated since then.
They've had probably 2 reviews of the foundation budget over the course of that time. Each one has tried to make it more effective and efficient. The most recent one produced the Student Opportunity Act, and it did in the early year of the 7 years, just as a municipality, but the last few years it has not. And it sounds like it's, given that we're one of, I think, 233 districts that are just getting the minimal increase.
I think part of the problem to me is the whole issues of what you're dealing with mandated requirements that aren't funded, which the town has mandated requirements that aren't funded. And so you keep having expenses that you're required to pay, but you're not,
Getting any.
the state keeps bumping more things on the cities and towns. Any other questions on that topic? All right. Thank you for showing us the others. At least we feel like we're not alone.
yes.
Number 8, the organizational chart.
I had attached that to the email.
Yes,
Guys,
it's a separate.
yeah.
Yeah,
But it also, if you get the, there's a
hyperlink.
there, you can get it. We don't have one for each building, but we had one for the district. In fact, I'm happy to answer questions if you have questions. Yeah, no, I have.
Any questions, comments on the organizational chart? Okay. Then we'll move to the school choice students, and currently how many have special education needs?
Could you tell, my printout is too small, I can't read the numbers.
Yeah, I can't.
So
They are very
I
tiny.
think my age is getting.
can't read
You
that?
know what? We'll have to go back onto the document and enlarge it on.
Basically, in the,
And Rich is speaking for all of us.
okay.
At least when we print it out, we probably could have blown it up.
Online, you looks.
We need a line item for magnifying glasses.
So this is a chart that you can get from the DESI website. It's hard to find, but through diligent effort, you can find it. And it basically looks at sending students, meaning students leaving your district through school choice, and receiving students. So if you look, it starts with FY16, I believe. We were not a receiving district because we were not participating in the school choice program. Starting in FY21, we began participating. And over the years, through FY '25, we have continued to participate, and the last 2 years, we've finally gone above our sending students versus receiving students. So we started the year with 38 students coming in, and we had 36 students going out via choice. Next year, we'll add another 20 slots to that, so we'll be further above. Of the students that, of those 38 students, because it is a blind lottery. So when they apply, you can't look at discipline, you can't look, all you can confirm is grade level, name, address, and so forth. And then you have to do a lottery. We do have 7 students with IEPs, none of whom are in the out-of-district category. And all of whom, because based on their services, which we report both through SIMS information that goes to DESI 3 times a year, and also then circuit breaker, we get additional funding. So you start in school choice with $5,000 per pupil, which has not changed in the years that school choice, the program has been introduced. So that might be something the legislature can look at. And then based on the services you're providing, it can go up. I think some of our students, we were getting reimbursed up to like 11,000, 12,000.
It varies. It's not just a set amount. It depends on their services, and that's worked out with the student services director.
Services
Thing.
being,
What
It could
they're
be,
getting in school,
yeah.
you know,
Are
helping
they
them.
getting speech services? Are they getting specialized services around reading, things of that nature?
so is that kind of like a potential whammy? I mean, you could get 100% ed.
You could, but you could still claim, I believe, that individual then, if you're going above that $52,000 threshold, now you can put them into circuit breaker. So you're going to get, just initially on.
Would you get,
that you're
would you get a reimbursed, would you get from school choice the 52,000?
We wouldn't get the 52,000. Well, you're not going to get 52,000 back on any student that.
It's only that
It's only
above,
above the 52,000.
only those expenses above,
And you're only getting 75% of that expenditure.
up to, yeah.
The system is broken.
Yes.
Yeah.
The state level.
It is, yes.
There was a, I don't know if I said this before, I know I've been talking for a while, so I apologize. There was a superintendent's email that went out today, and I think most districts signed on, I signed on, asking the legislature to fund circuit breaker not at 75%, but 90%. You know, at least above that $52,000 threshold, you're getting most of that money back, where now you're still giving up 25% of eligible costs. So we'll see where that goes. Obviously, the state is looking for funding as well, so we're all in that search.
Other questions on number 9? Let's move to number 10.
So, yeah, those are the,
Self-explanatory.
Yeah.
yeah, now, if you want to watch the budget hearing on Monday nights, I'll be listing those off and explaining it, and, you know, some of the things I've already said. You asked about impact. I mean, the immediate impact is what's going on right now. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of people realizing that I've taught for 10, 12 years in one school, and I may be, because of my licensure, now moving to another school. In some cases, there are challenges when you're dealing with bumping rights and contracts, because you're licensed in something doesn't necessarily make you a content expert in something. And so there are some folks that are going to be moving into areas where.
Is it content expert? Is that a defined thing?
That's just a Gordon Smith term.
Just checking.
Yeah, sorry. It's 5:30. Someone might use it as well, but I'm using it today. But anyway, so we're going to have to give some support to folks to get them ready to go from something they've been teaching for quite a while, that now they may be teaching something different that they're licensed for, so yes, they have a job,
But it's not what.
but it's not what they've been doing.
Right.
And it may be at grade levels that they've never participated at before. And I'm sure that's scaring some people. I've had some conversations around that. And I know that judging from how we ended the week prior to vacation, I know I'll have more conversations. And principals are worried because they're trying to figure out, just especially the high school and the middle school, where you're trying to run your core academics and then you have electives. It's run a little bit differently at the middle school than it is at the high school. But at the high school, it's all based on, student interest and choice. And they try to give as many students as possible their first choice. We're reducing some of those options. And in some cases, so that we're not reducing some of those options, we're transferring someone in, and that may change how that course is run. It will change how the course is run. You talked about class size. You're going to see that, definitely at the 5th grade level.
So if I can jump,
Sure.
my question there was because you're eliminating one at each of the elementaries, I naively assumed that it was because you're rising 4th graders, that whole cohort was smaller in population.
It was a combination of factors. The 3 through 5 schools definitely had the best class size. There were some other elements that probably not good for a public meeting, so
Sure.
helps
Enough
that
said.
decision. So I'll leave it there.
The 3 Meadowbrook reading specialists, obviously, that's going to have an impact. How,
In fact, yeah.
I'm presuming that those individuals were giving tier 2 and 3 interventions.
Predominantly, yeah. It's in some cases tier 3, but predominantly tier 2.
2.
Yeah. And our hope there is that there is some Title I funding that continue to exist that we've utilized as part of at least one of those salaries. And we're hoping to utilize it in getting part-time tutors, which we've had real good success with for math intervention. And because most of the people we've now gotten a chance to hire are retired teachers and are really skilled in providing that intervention. And it gives us the opportunity to basically say, here's how we're posting this job. It is what it is. You either want it and you're qualified to do it or you don't. And so we're hoping that that same type of model will provide the same type of benefit. But it's a risk because you're losing licensed teachers that were doing the job.
So does that eliminate all the reading specialists there, or are there other remaining reading specialists?
We have other reading specialists in the district, so it doesn't eliminate.
So I meant
At Meadow-
just at Meadowbrook, so it eliminates that whole
It does.
strata. Yeah.
And so as we were talking about redeploying services, that might be one of the discussions this spring that's upcoming, because we're going to need to support students in many different ways, and we're going to have fewer people to do it.
Other questions for Gordon or Pam on number 10? If not, number 11, to a large degree, I feel like you've kind of been doing that as we've gone along.
I have.
These questions, but
Like walking advertisement.
Rich, you had kind of thought this one up. Do you have any other?
Yeah, I guess I have one question.
Yeah.
Mr. Superintendent, when the town manager finished his presentation on his side of the town budget, I asked him a very pointed question. Is this budget going to affect town services at all? His answer was no, minimal at best. I'm going to ask you the same question. How is this going to affect the educational services with this budget? What's the impact?
I think there's going to be a number of impacts because there's a lot of unknown to see how this plays out as we start the next school year. You'll have some class size increases. We'll have some untested ways to support students we were just talking about in terms of, I mean, we have the examples of math and that's worked. Will that work for reading? Hopefully. We're going to be redeploying people in areas that maybe they never thought they were going to be engaging in, as a educational professional. And so all of that, just because we're all human, is change. And so there's going to be a range of emotion that people experience. Some of that, hopefully will eventually get to enthusiasm and excitement and can bring that to the new position. But there's, unfortunately, having gone through a few of these conversations already, most of it right now is frustration, anger, and confusion. Give you one example. Because of bumping and contractual obligations, one of the meetings that I had, we're going to lose a lot of our best, newest talent because they're the least senior. So that's going to
Also the cheapest too.
Yeah.
Well, but in terms of their training in the teaching colleges,
Yeah, they've had different training
right?
than our veteran staff. They've had
Right.
training around
Have
how do you
training that
Right.
more dovetails
correct.
my assumption
And the challenge,
today,
right.
that
Yeah.
American
You're
students.
exactly right. The professional development we've been trying to provide to veteran and all staff is around how you engage and work with students who are currently in front of you, not how you've done it for 15
Right.
years, because those students aren't in front of you anymore.
No.
But to the point that I was talking about in terms of emotion and confusion, so one person who will not have a job was asking, was it something that was in my evaluation? Did I do something wrong? And I've been in the individual's room and I said, no, it has nothing to do, unfortunately, it has nothing to do with that. And I brought the contract over and we went through exactly what it has to do with. And so here's someone who's doing an exceptional job for us, for our students, who will not be with us next year. The only thing I can offer is, a recommendation and support and, ask me, how do I make myself more employable? One of my answers always is get a special education license. So that's going to be, that's the impact that's going on right now. But I don't see that necessarily changing quickly as we start the next year. We're going to be planning and working at that from now through August. We'll have a plan in place and, I will be more optimistic than I am right now. But yeah, it will have an impact. And
If I can jump in again, I think the impact won't be as concrete for the public for any of us to notice in that first year or two.
no. The other element that, is challenging, because I've been here a few years, it seems like I'm dismantling everything we've built.
I know.
And so that's hard, especially as I look out my window and I see that a community has invested in a new high school. And I'm just hoping to have the resources to put it in that new high school, because obviously the community values education. And the reason that we have students who apply, even when we don't have school choice slots, they call and ask, is because we've always had a really good reputation as a school system. And we're going to fight hard to continue that, but this will have an impact.
Any final questions for Gordon and?
Just
Go
one,
right
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Kathy. Yeah.
You alluded, Pam, to, if the Chapter 70 monies, once it finally gets through the Senate, and then the conference committee and so forth. If, knock on wood, another couple 100,000 is allocated to East Long Meadow and it flows to the schools, will you use that to try to recall positions? Would that be your,
It's not
I know,
totally our decision, but that would be our recommendation. I'm sorry, go ahead, Pam.
Because I'm gonna disagree.
It's okay.
We haven't talked about this, so I feel like I'm put
I
on
don't
the
want to
spot.
put you on the spot,
But I just,
but it were it to flow
I
to
feel
the schools,
it would be in our best interest to try to build up that circuit breaker reimbursement that we talked about so that you have that safety net. I feel that 185 would probably be best to do that because FY 27 is not looking as bright either, not for the town, not for the
no,
school.
well, that's kind
I'm
of
trying to think of
how
the
you
bigger
invest
picture.
your money, you know?
Yes,
From up,
I were a good team.
I'm sorry, Gordon.
Yeah, okay.
no, but that makes a
Ultimately,
lot of
we'll
sense.
have to make a recommendation were that to happen.
Right, it
And
would
then
be
the school committee would have
decision.
to endorse
Right.
what action they want to take with additional funding.
Did our legislators, I know that they must feel the heat because
I think
we're not the
so.
only district.
No.
Need
Mm.
every day
Yep.
walking
It's
disasters
statewide.
in the school systems as far as what's going to happen.
Poor Jake Olivera doesn't want to hear me anymore. We have a long-term relationship. He's a great guy, but
I just,
I'm sure he doesn't want to answer my call.
yeah. Well, I imagine they're getting a lot of calls. No,
I think they are.
just,
And there's
I mean,
been
I think
many-
Westfield
No.
was just in the news this week,
Yesterday,
yesterday, that they're,
$16 million deficit, 43 layoffs.
yeah. What school?
School department.
Westfield.
how do you?
I don't know how you come back from that. I mean, they're a bigger district, but you
So
know,
yes,
so
we're not alone.
And
Yeah.
there's a big presence at the Ways and Means Committee meeting at UMass where
yeah,
That's
I was there.
Gordon was
Yeah.
there.
At the end of April, I mean, the end of March, was
Yeah.
it on March 24th
Yes,
or
Gordon
something?
went, he was, yep. And we've
Almost
been
didn't get
to,
in.
say that again?
I said I almost didn't get in.
Oh, yeah.
Standing room only, and then I had,
That's a good, I mean, not that you didn't.
no, it was good. No,
It's a
I just
good thing that it
said, no, that superintendent group
came out and
I said, oh.
They had
okay.
you with the students, see?
Yeah.
Well, any final questions? Connor?
No, I think that was
Kim,
a wealth of
Rebecca?
information.
Yeah. Marilyn, Anna? No? Rich, Kathy?
Thank you.
I
Dawn?
think Maryland's trying to.
Marilyn?
I was just going to say it's very sobering, that last piece that we discussed. I have faith. I have to have faith in the educators in our community that somehow we'll manage to pull things together. I want to thank Pam and Gordon for spending the time with us. It's been incredibly helpful to hear everything you've had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I wish to echo that. A lot of time, but it's been very helpful to kind of put the flesh onto the numbers.
And I'll echo that. It's such a complex story you're trying to explain to people who don't work with it every day. So that's not lost on the council as well as
Thank you.
your circumstances.
You make a good point in terms of the training that some of our most recent hires have had, because it's different training than I've had, that, you know, even someone who's maybe 10 years fewer in education has had, and that's important. You know, any organization gets better if you have a balance between, you know, veterans and newer staff coming on. And when you get into these situations, unfortunately, when you have seniority and bumping kind of governing that piece, once you've made a decision, you lose that balance. And that's something that we'll have to overcome, and hopefully we will.
Well, thank you for spending so much time with us and
Thank
being
you.
so thorough. We very much appreciate it.
Sorry if we overstayed our welcome.
No, it's obviously
It's an
we
important
had
perspective.
questions all the way along, and so thank you.
And please know, I guess I just want to say for the school committee, on behalf of them, that those decisions were not easy decisions.
I can only
Long-
imagine. Right.
Long meetings that took a lot of time and
Angst.
yes.
Yeah, there's a
So,
lot of angst. Anyway, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
All right.
Budget Bible. Bye now. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So I think my only ambition for the rest of this meeting is to cover our minutes
Yep.
and
Good with that.
kind of go over what we want to get done for next meeting.
Mhm.
And maybe just clarify, Connor, because we did set up a meeting for the following Monday, how you want us to provide recommendations to the town council in what, in what format or whatever.
I'm good with whatever format's easiest for this committee. If it's just a, short memo like it's done in previous
Right.
years where it's just, a couple paragraphs, and some
All right.
bullets on
So
what
then,
some suggestions are,
so we'll do 4:30. We'll try to wrap up if we can, but if we can't, we'll use 5:05 as or that Monday, I forget what the date is, to just finish off and make sure we're clear on the recommendations. So let's get to the minutes because what I would say is, so for next week, my vote would be first, we just have a recap with about the school discussion because it's fresh in our minds. And anything we want to say about it and perhaps any position we might have on the 185,000 in terms of recommendation to the town council in terms of how they might approach that, if that happens. And then finish off with the enterprise funds, revolving funds, reserve policy and sources and uses. And that pretty much wraps up. I think we've covered pretty much everything else.
We still have a few votes.
We got
Is that
the enterprise funds,
yeah.
revolving funds.
Vote on enterprise.
Right.
Yeah, we have to vote on the enterprise. Well, it's 5:47. Let's get through, let's do our minutes.
Yeah.
So Rich was very
Poor Rich.
fast.
A good job.
Thank you.
So he sent them out. We've all had it. Is there any corrections that anyone would like to make? Changes? There were none. Would there be, I noticed that, and Dawn, I think that was a good suggestion that we append the questions that.
Right, yeah.
Made it a lot easier.
And I would say the questions that we submitted to the school committee would be the
Right.
ones that
Yes,
we want
that's
to append.
what we're, because it's difficult to integrate.
Yes, yes.
Poor Rich's fingers were
Couldn't do
probably on
it.
fire anyhow.
So do I hear a motion to approve? I haven't heard any.
So moved.
corrections.
So moved.
All right,
Second.
second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Wow, I tell you, that was like sorry, it's a,
Well,
we
Ann is-
gotta do a roll call. Rich?
Absolutely.
Kathy?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Jim? Yes. Anna?
Yes.
All right, I think, is that all that has to vote? Unanimous. Wow, you really, that was a superstar job, I guess. Nice going. So who would be willing to take minutes for the?
It's my turn. It's
Oh,
come back around.
Okay, Kathy, thank you so much. And that really does it, except that we really reviewed all the enterprise funds.
We just
The
have
only
to vote on it.
question was was there something about the ambulance? Was there something?
No,
was there a
we
question?
got a question about the police department and the usage of the detective car.
Oh, yeah.
We wanted an inventory of how many vehicles they had.
And Tom was gonna get that.
Tom was
So
gonna-
we'll have it by the
Yeah,
time
we will.
next week.
It'll probably.
What was that? So I can remind.
3 minutes.
We were discussing, or I raised the question about, is the request on the capital plan for a detective vehicle based on, no, how do I want to say it? each year we allocate for 2 additional cruisers, and ideally, when they arrive, the oldest ones come off the road. And my question was two-part. Could the detective vehicle that they're requesting come out of one of the retired vehicles? And then that led to the question, can we get an accurate number of police cars in the fleet that are on the road, actually,
So,
not,
so my recollection is that was a follow-up question to the capital budget,
yes.
which we did
Yes.
vote and approve.
We
but
did
We're still
approve.
waiting
We
for that
wanna
as a
just- right.
follow-up.
You're right.
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 But was there some follow-up on the enterprise as well?
There was discussion about, but I don't. Stormwater?
No.
Stormwater was a fairly large discussion on,
Right, the increases.
to understand.
There
how it's-
there was quite a discussion on a stormwater fund.
Right,
Yeah,
A 40%, 47% increase
Yes.
was due to COVID, and a lot of talk about the $50 per parcel, which frankly,
Yes, that was Ralph's discussion.
that was Ralph.
Think it was more, I don't know that it was a discussion germane to the FY 26 budget, but more so in terms of how to deal with it and how to structure it for the next year.
right.
Yeah, the rate structure, the way it's set up, if there's a $10 increase to that residential rate, there's only a $10 increase to all the other rates.
Right,
And the concern that he had, that it wasn't proportionate to, like, if you have a $200 fee and it's only going up $10, and then you have a $35 fee that's going up $10.
Yeah,
okay.
right.
yeah.
Proportionate.
Equity.
And discussion.
I think the concern was. more-
And discussion ensued.
Right, I don't know that we're in a position to try to change it.
Yeah, it's
This
not under
quickly.
our purview to change it, just to understand maybe the rationale, but.
So, yeah, a follow-up. So are there any lingering questions that we need for the enterprise funds? Or did we just hold it in case we did have questions after we considered the discussions?
I think we just held it in case.
All right,
That was my recollection.
all right. So, does anyone want to make a motion to recommend approval of the enterprise fund budgets as developed by the town manager?
So moved.
Second,
Any other discussion?
I might just be able to offer that the detective vehicle is a second detective vehicle, because I think they're looking to create a new position within the department. And I don't think they're in a position to utilize the retiring vehicles because there's a delay in the.
I'm glad to hear that clarification, because that didn't
That's
come up
new.
before. That's a new piece of information, though, so good, thank you.
I think due to supply chain, there's a delay in getting their new cruisers
Yeah.
like fully outfitted with the,
The bar.
that they need inside. And so I don't think they have even enough like vehicles in
Do what they
rotation
need to do.
for their
Yeah.
fleet.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, then I think we need a roll call vote.
Affirmative?
Yes, Kathy? This is on the
Yes.
enterprise fund.
Yes.
Dawn?
I'm a yes with a strong recommendation that we do. I would hope that the town would look at perhaps investigating other ways to do the stormwater.
For FY 27?
Yes, yeah.
Do you want to make an amendment to the
No, I'll let
motion?
it stand. I'll just, I think we talked about it and I think that
All right.
the awareness had to
All
come.
Okay, yep.
Yeah.
Jim, I'm an aye. Anna?
Yes.
Okay. That's,
I will-
yep.
Can
go
I- Who made the motion and who seconded it?
I made the motion, Kathy seconded.
Okay. Thank you.
I would add Dawn's part about recommending that the way the fee is structured and developed to be looked at for FY 27. It's a good point.
Got it.
Great. All right, we got something
We
done.
did.
Yes, we did.
Could I just clarify
Yes,
one thing?
yeah.
You mentioned that it was for the enterprise funds, so you're referring to water, sewer, LCAT, and stormwater.
Correct.
Okay, so not ambulance yet.
Well, ambulance is an
Oh,
enterprise fund.
It's not.
It
That's
is
why
not.
I'm trying to clarify.
Right,
Yeah, and
yeah,
So that's a receipts reserved for appropriation.
yes, we'll do that with the,
We'll do
with the
that, yes.
revolving funds.
Yeah.
Right.
That was quite the puzzle.
Yeah, so next week we'll do revolving funds, including ambulance. And then reserve policy, we'll review the sources and uses and project the tax rate. I don't know that there's anything we need to vote on for that. It's
Right.
just a review. And then we'll just discuss how we want to approach the 5-5
Right.
meeting or whether we need it.
Mr. Chair, do we have to vote on the school committee budget?
Excuse
We vote
me?
On the town side budget, do we vote on the school committee's budget?
It's part of the town manager budget. It's the overall budget
Right.
that he's submitting is that. But yes,
The answer is
that'll
yes.
be
We'll do
part
that
of our
next week.
4:30. I figure we should let it stew.
Oh, I don't know, I agree.
I mean, unless people are comfortable,
I like to-
No,
I like
unless
to-
people are comfortable doing it now.
No.
Okay. In which case,
I move to adjourn.
all right, do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call. Mr. Fracaro,
Absolutely.
Kathy,
All in, yes.
Don,
Yes.
Jim, yes, Anna?
Yes.
All right, the Financial Oversight Committee meeting is adjourned.
And then for a motion to close the special town council meeting.
So moved?